This week, it's cockroaches and aquamoths. Oh my. Hello and welcome to another episode of the podcast version of Echoes of Giant Monsters. I'm your host, your pal, your buddy, Slick. Thank you for joining me yet again here on this podcast edition of Echoes of Giant Monsters, available wherever you catch your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, where you can find various other content that I put out, including a special look or the beginnings of an investigation into the one mysterious Dent Man, who Dent Man himself shared that video, which I greatly appreciate, though he then promptly put up a picture of him holding a gun that said "Floss or Die." So, hopefully those two things aren't related, but I do floss, Dent Man, if you're listening. So anyway, for this week's episode, I thought would be a good time to focus on a particular aspect of Godzilla vs. Gigan that I think is sometimes overlooked, but it's a part of the movie that I've always appreciated. This is not going to be like a full review or a full making of podcast about Godzilla vs. Gigan. There is surprisingly a lot of meat on that bone, and I think it kind of does it a disservice for me to try to push this all into one podcast. So I wanted to actually just focus on one aspect of Godzilla vs. Gigan. And then after that, people like the Battle Line talk. I like talking about Battle Line. We have a brand new season that is almost at its midpoint as of this recording. And I think I'll be chatting about that at the end. So with that said, let's get this underway. Released in 1972, Godzilla vs. Gigan is a bit of an oddity in the Showa series, though I guess you could probably say that about every movie in the Showa series. It's not the lucid fever dream that Godzilla vs. Ghidorah was a year prior. It's not the full descent into insanity, albeit fun insanity in my opinion, that Godzilla vs. Megalon would provide a year later. Instead, Godzilla vs. Gigan is a fantastical story that's played mostly serious and is probably most similar in tone to 1974's Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, which is another movie where aliens from a dying planet seek to conquer our world. Directed by Jun Fukuda and written by Shinichi Sekizawa, Godzilla vs. Gigan went through a number of story proposals and abandoned projects before the final product made it to screen. The end result is something familiar, but also kind of unique. Yeah, it's another plot about aliens mind-controlling alien kaiju that Godzilla must repel, but this time the aliens are disguised cockroaches whose first step in their plan is to hide their HQ inside an amusement park, whose centerpiece is a life-size Godzilla statue. The M Space Hunter Nebula aliens are undone by probably the most random assortment of human heroes the series has ever had. Comic book artist, black belt karate expert, and a brother and sister duo where the brother is a hippie armed with the deadliest corn on the cob this side of the Mississippi. But probably the most important aspect of this movie, and the aspect that I'm going to focus on for this episode, is that Godzilla vs. Gigan would mark the final time that Haru Nakajima, the original and most prolific Godzilla suit actor, would be portraying the character on the big screen. And it's fitting, then, that his opponent in this movie, Gigan, is portrayed by Kenpachiro Satsuma, the man who would go on to carry the Godzilla mantle in the 80s and the 90s. Now, at this point, Nakajima had been playing Godzilla since 1954 and was the main suit actor, outside of a bulk of Son of Godzilla and a few one-off scenes here and there where Katsuma Tezuka, who is quickly becoming the unofficial mascot of this channel, but I digress, slipped into the role. Satsuma was relatively a new kid on the suit acting block at this time. Satsuma had recently moved from bit parts in movies in the 60s to portraying Ghidorah opposite Nakajima the year prior. Now, before I get too much deeper, I'm going to disclose that I'm a huge pro wrestling fan. I know. And a lot of that probably does play into my takes related to both the on-the-screen and behind-the-scenes symbolism of Godzilla vs. Gigan. Like a good wrestling storyline, this film feels like the culmination of a story where the wily veteran is passing the torch to the young upstart, a symbolic moment of endorsement by the old guard. And having previously squared off in Godzilla vs. Ghidorah, Nakajima and Satsuma already had an established chemistry with each other, and here Satsuma gets to play the much more nimble Gigan, a stark contrast to his last role as the sludgy Ghidorah. And while the tag team main event between Godzilla and Anguirus going up against the debuting Gigan and the oddly slow-moving King Ghidorah has a fair share of stock footage, I think the new footage is pretty impressive. I think the battle between Godzilla and Gigan is paced like classic pro wrestling fare. You have Godzilla, the babyface, who's bloodied and battered by the evil heel Gigan, and the good guys seem on the ropes for a good chunk of the brawl. And this is one time where the Godzilla suit itself being torn and tattered heightens the stakes, in my opinion. Godzilla looks and feels like he's been through a lifetime of battles, as Nakajima probably physically felt himself at this point after carrying around and wearing these heavy kaiju suits for almost 2 full decades at this point. But ultimately, the baby faces make their comeback, Gigan gets pummeled and tossed through bridges and buildings, and things culminate with Godzilla and Anguirus hitting their tag team finisher on Ghidorah to send them packing. And as the aliens retreat, the music drops out, the camera slowly pans in on Godzilla, watching them flee, and then he starts doing that mouth wipe, pawing pose thing that he started to do in recent years. And it almost kind of feels like Nakajima is saying goodbye to this role, and we're closing the book on an era. Now, for the remainder of the Showa era, Godzilla would be played by a revolving door of suit actors who all brought their own interesting takes to the character. But Nakajima's portrayal will always be my favorite. Granted, his take evolved over the years from slow lumbering monster to tough as nails superhero, because Godzilla was always deliberate, with no wasted motion, and felt like a very serious, calculating fighter. I think his portrayal in this suit in particular, which he first donned in 1968 and was subsequently put through quite the ringer over the next several years, is probably his most emotive portrayal of Godzilla as well. And I could be a little biased, because this is probably my favorite Godzilla design. But again, I think it's the Godzilla suit that can easily portray when Godzilla is annoyed, when he's determined, when he's angry. And in this movie, as we saw, as he gets the crap kicked out of him for quite a long time, when he's beaten up and battered, but when he makes his comeback, you see that determination in the suit, even as it's literally disintegrating on screen. Now, Satsuma's portrayal of Gigan has been enduring as well. Gigan is often compared to Starscream and other cocky chicken shit heels, just take it back to wrestling. And while he's a clearly skilled fighter, Gigan is a cocky and spineless character. He's always willing to abandon his partners at the first sign of trouble. He's one of the most developed characters of Godzilla's rogue gallery and a fan favorite, and I think that's a testament to Satsuma's portrayal. So it's no wonder that these two brilliant suit actors gave us the kaiju suit actor version of The Rock versus Stone Cold, or The Undertaker versus Bray Wyatt. Maybe that's not the best example. Maybe Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels would be the better example here. But either way, it's too bad we only had 2 movies where Nakajima and Satsuma got to square off, because they clearly had great chemistry together. Godzilla vs. Gigan is an often overlooked movie, as it's overshadowed by the movies it's sandwiched between. And while everyone's mileage may vary with the film as a whole, hopefully you'll share my appreciation for the climactic showdown that features 2 of the best ever to do it. So what is going on in the world of Godzilla Battle Line? Well, there's a few things going on. The festival tournament, at the festival in Osaka, that tournament that was canceled due to threats against some of the players, is back on. It is starting up this weekend, I believe. I do know somebody who has been selected for the tournament. I'm not going to say their name or anything like that here, but, if you know, you know, and we're all pulling for you, pal. In addition to the tournament, which I'm curious to see how that goes, there has been a random rise in Battle Line merchandise in the Godzilla store, which is pretty exciting. So there has been some sticker packs and keychains that use some of the artwork that's been created for Godzilla Battle Line. So it's not the actual sprites, but some of the artwork that you see in the title screen. It's been used in the promotional material, things like that. So what's interesting to me is that, first, that the Godzilla store does market this as Battle Line merchandise, which is nice. Like at first I was wondering if they were going to just market them as, here's some artwork stickers, here's some artwork keychains, but no, they are officially tagged as Battle Line merchandise, which is cool. I think that's good. That's acknowledgement from Toho. It's acknowledgement from the Godzilla store, and it shows that they think there's enough of a active base that they can make merchandise for Godzilla Battle Line. And what's interesting too is that as the stickers and then later the keychain sets dropped, I tried to order both through Zen Market, which is a proxy service that if you are outside of Japan, you can use a proxy service like Zen Market to do the shopping for you. Really good service, but even though I thought I acted fairly quickly, the stickers and then later the keychains sold out. Now, some of that could be, some of the characters that are involved. They did have the -1 Godzilla in some of the sets, but I hope and think that probably the fact that it was Battleline merchandise and we don't get all that much in the way of merchandise for the game, I think that probably helped it sell out as well. So hopefully those should be reprinted soon and available again soon. I'm really hoping that they kind of go the way these things usually go, and it makes them like little acrylic stand figures. I'm actually low-key a sucker for acrylic stand figures. The other big mobile game that I used to play for years and years and years was Fire Emblem Heroes, and they released some acrylic stand figures for some of the characters in that game, and I bought a few of the ones that I use a lot. And plus, I got the Singular Point Blu-ray, DVD, I don't remember which it was, that came out a couple years ago. That came with the exclusive Bandai figure, but it also came with a whole bunch of acrylic characters on stands. So I think they're really neat. I think they're eye-catching. I'm holding out hope that that is what is coming next for the Battleline merchandise in the Godzilla store. But now moving on to the game itself. So as of this recording, we are about to kind of hit the midpoint of this season. This has been a pretty interesting season from my perspective. We got 2 new units. We got Aqua Mothra from Rebirth of Mothra, and we got Godzilla from the Mechagodzilla duology, or the Kiryu saga, from 2002 and 2003. So 2 good new units. They are not meta-shaking, game-breaking like the Chibi Brats and Lightsaber Destroyer were last month, but instead they're just 2 really solid units. Starting with Aqua Mothra, he's a pretty fast-moving, low-cost unit that fires off, the cross-beam attack that Aqua Mothra used. And it's interesting kit, Again, the speed is nice. It seems like characters or new units are moving faster and faster, and the gameplay is getting more faster-paced. I don't know if that's deliberate, but that just kind of seems to be the way things are going. Lightsaber Destroyer from last season, took off sprinting. The Chibi Brats were fast enough. And we'll get to Godzilla 2002, but his whole gimmick is running. And Aqua Mothra is also fairly fast. But what's interesting about Aqua Mothra, I'm just going to say Aqua, because it's a tongue twister trying to say all that together. So Aqua, after he's on the field for a certain period of time, he expires naturally on his own and gives you 1 extra energy, kind of a callback to what Legendary Mothra does upon defeat. So again, fast-moving units and stuff that helps you boost up your energy faster. I wonder if that's the way things are going. I don't know. So pretty solid unit. I don't think it has to be in your deck, but for this month, while we're getting the level boost, I think it's worth a try. Maybe he'll hang around post this season, but decent unit overall. Now with Godzilla 2002, Godzilla from the Kiryu saga. Now I'll say, I said earlier in the podcast that Godzilla 68, through 70, through 72 is probably my favorite Godzilla suit, or at least is in the top 3. This is another Godzilla design that's probably in the top 3 for me. So I'm pretty pumped that this Godzilla has come to Battleline. And what's pretty interesting here, or not interesting, but of note, is that kind of getting back to the sort of cartoony, I don't want to say chibi, because the game does actually have chibi characters now, but somewhere kind of like in the cartoony, not super hyper-realistic design is how this sprite is. Honestly, I think they probably just reworked the Final Wars sprite a little bit. It seems like they kind of have the same skin texture going on. And honestly, the 2 suits aren't super far off from each other, generally speaking, in design sense. But either way, it's kind of back in that not hyper-realistic design and not quite the cartoony design of the early days of Battleline, somewhere kind of in the middle. That's the art style that I particularly prefer for Battleline. It's a little odd how the art style is kind of like all over the place sometimes. Like -1 is very, movie realistic. Orga is kind of believed to be, may or may not be, a scan of an X Plus figure turned into a sprite. I mean, that's cool. That's fine. There's been rumors that Evolved Godzilla, should he be coming next month, might be a rip of or a scan of the Jada Toys Walking Godzilla. We'll have to see if that holds out to be true or not. But I don't mind the sprites that look a little bit more realistic. It's just that it's really been all over the place. I kind of wish they would kind of settle on an art style. It seems like it's evolved over the last few years. Part of me secretly wishes that for the anniversary they kind of go back and redo some of the sprites. Like, honestly, the sprite for Ultima is just, it's like nightmare fuel, and I would love to see that get a little bit of a tweak or an upgrade, but someday, I guess. But either way, this sprite, I think it looks really cool. He, upon 2 defeats, he evolves into the Tokyo SOS version of Godzilla, where he gets the scar in his chest. Although little bit bothers me a little bit that the scar isn't colored in, really. It just kind of matches the skin tone, whereas usually that scar is like a little bit more of like kind of like a brownish reddish hue, so it kind of sticks out a little bit. But either way, pretty interesting kit for Godzilla. He's basically an upgraded King Caesar. So you deploy him, he takes off running, full sprint, because again, speed is where we are at in Battle Line this month, it feels like. And he throws a shoulder tackle that does pretty decent damage, and I think it's every 3 seconds off the top of my head. He fires his atomic breath, which also does knockback, and it does piercing. Pretty cool kit. And then after when he's in between, throwing shoulder tackles and firing his breath, he's doing kind of like a claw tail attack, which does pretty decent damage. So for a 5-cost unit that gets around the field pretty quickly, can catch back up to your pushes that are going on the other end of the field, I think he's a pretty solid unit. Again, is he a unit I'm going to invest in a lot after this month? I don't know. I guess that kind of remains to be seen. Gonna have to see what kind of comes next. I think he'll probably kind of go back to the bench after this month, but I am having a lot of fun using him. He could be a unit that, as I get G materials, I might start dumping them into him a little bit more, just purely because I really like the suit design. However, I have been working on a little bit of a side project of Battle Line, where I have been beefing up Godzilla 99, or the Godzilla from Godzilla 2000, who I think gets a lot of hate for no reason. I think that is a solid unit. Yeah, health could still be a little bit better, but Godzilla 2000 attacks quickly, hits okay, and has pretty decent damage, and again, moves kind of quick. I think, if you got Godzilla 2000 as part of like a group, or just having something in front of him absorbing a couple hits, I think it's a pretty solid unit. Gets a lot of hate. And I am part of the Godzilla 2000 fan club when it comes to units in Battle Line. So this podcast officially endorses Godzilla 2000 in Battle Line. Endorses for what? I don't know. But I'm just saying, not a bad unit. Give Godzilla 2000 another chance. So I should also mention that, I forgot to mention anyway, that Godzilla 2002 also can function as a leader. To be honest, I have not even tried him as a leader. I pretty much just always use Gigan as a leader. I wish we could get stats on how many wins players have with various leaders, because I have almost never deviated from using Gigan, other than maybe in the early days of the game I used Godzilla 89 here or there, but and then dabbled in Ultima for a little bit, but for the most part it's always been Gigan. So I don't think I'm going to be trying out Godzilla 2002 as a leader. From what I've seen from other players and what I've heard from other players, is that just fine, just kind of fine. The leader ability involves a knockback attack, and then gives Godzilla the ability to fire atomic breath that causes knockback for about 20 seconds. seems like a good idea on paper. When I have seen players try to use it in games, Godzilla fires his breath, and then he kind of takes a moment to kind of roar and do that like pretty iconic pose from the Kiryu saga that this Godzilla does, because he has a pretty striking silhouette, and when he roars and throws his head back, it's a pretty badass looking sight. So, but I was kind of surprised that he does that in the middle of the game after firing off his special, because that seems to be a lot of time where he's not doing anything and exposed to hits. So, as a leader, doesn't seem that great. As a unit, pretty solid. Same thing with Aqua. Two pretty solid units. Units that aren't game-breaking, aren't really meta-shaking, just two solid units. You know, I've seen people still using the Chibi Brats in Lightsaber Destroya. I think these are players that newer players that probably invested new money. We'll call it new money into those two units. And, I'm seeing them a little bit more than I expected to see them, but definitely nowhere near the frequency that they were seeing last month, which was basically like every single match. But they're still there. They're still a pest. And I assume it's only going to get worse unless new units start providing counters to stun and things like that Chibi Mechagodzilla just throws at your team and ruins your day. But it was kind of nice to kind of go back to, a less of a broken meta season. There's a lot of random decks that I've been playing against this month, which is nice. A lot of creativity is back. It's kind of like I said last month. I think the sign of a good unit or a bad unit is how it impacts deck creation. And when deck creativity goes out the window because there are some units that are just too broken, and you basically all find that everyone's just running the exact same decks to accommodate those new broken units, then that's not good. That's not a good unit. So I'm glad the Chibi Brat season is over. Things are kind of leveling out again. I think this is a good season so far. We have not hit egg mode yet, which is one of my favorite modes in all of Battleline, but I'm always looking forward to that. Especially, I love the deck restrictions and having to get creative with these decks for egg mode. I will just again say the same thing I say every podcast, where I just wish we could get like 2 weeks of it or 3 weeks of it. I think it was last season. I think just the way the calendar worked out, we got like 11 or 12 days of egg mode. I loved it. I could not get enough of it. So give us more, Battleline. Give us more. But in terms of giving more, I don't think I have anything more to give. When it's just me and my own on this podcast, I don't think you really need to listen to me ramble for more than like 20, 30 minutes. And, we're kind of like at that point. I enjoyed kind of going over, something that I really like about Godzilla versus Gigan. And then I also really enjoy the back end of these podcasts where I just kind of casually shoot the breeze, and it's not really scripted and barely even have bullet points. It's nice, just nice and laid back. So I'm not entirely sure what's next. I am trying to, as I mentioned in another episode, I am trying to lock down a friend of mine who has never seen Shin Godzilla. I'm going to watch Shin Godzilla with him and get his instant reaction. I was kind of hoping that was going to be ready to go this week, but I don't know. Guess he's just a busy dude. But I think we kind of have something squared away for hopefully this weekend. So hopefully that's next in terms of long form podcast. In terms of content in general, well, I think, there's a lot that I'm always kind of churning out on YouTube, either in short form videos or in YouTube shorts. So, that's probably the place to be if you want the steady stream of content. You can also follow me on Twitter, X, whatever, at Echoes of GM Pod, where I will always kind of share these links to the things that I'm doing and the content that I'm putting out. So if you follow me at least in one of those places, you're not going to miss anything. So with that said, it's been a treat. It's been a pleasure. This is your pal, Slick, saying, see ya. Till next time. Goodbye.